Hello everyone and welcome. Andy Bryan here from the Soul Pathway, and today I'm here to bring you another Soul Pathway interview where I will be sharing Lee and Sherry's incredible spiritual journey and soul pathway, which is all about sacred unions and deep soul connections and bringing two beautiful people together to create an amazing partnership. Their work is known to be Relationships Reinvented, which they'll tell you a bit more about today. More importantly, they'll be sharing their journey and story. But what I wanted to do before we get started is just say that it's going to be slightly different than normal interviews, where they'll be both sharing their individual journeys whilst at the same time weaving in how they've come together at the same time. So I'm really excited about having and sharing this interview with them both and with you all. Before we get started though, I'd love to find out more about yourselves and what you do.
All right.
We are Lee and Sherry Patterson. We own a business called Relationships Reinvented, and we do life, relationship, and spiritual coaching and sacred union coaching, helping those who are really struggling with the, I want to use the word unrest of this connection. And it's a lot, and it's what we do. It's what we do every day, and we enjoy it. We do a lot of other things too, a lot of webinars, seminars, public speaking. We're authors,
Ministers.
Fantastic.
We do a lot of things. We run parentless prevention. We keep parents who are divorcing or separating with children, and we want them to be able to co-parent effectively and lovingly, and incorporate new partners and new spouses into the family, and keeping it a family unit, and sexual abuse and trauma coaching. And we run a coaching certification program.
Fantastic. So you do a lot of work, which is amazing. And today, obviously, we're here to talk about your work in terms of deep soul connections and divine unions, and how you support those on their journey. But more importantly, how you came to do this amazing work, because we all have a journey to get there, and you've both got individuals' journeys to get there to where you've started, or to where you are now. So we'll start off by diving into your journey itself. And for me, it all starts with our old selves before we even connect with that deep soul connection that we have, and we are very much living, the world like we do each and every day. And then soon enough, we are awakened to this beautiful soul that we connect with. What I'd love to know from both of you is, well, where you started, who you were before you met and connected with one another.
I was wearing so many masks, I didn't know who I was. Living a life full of disconnect. And, then comes this beautiful energy towards me, this beautiful being towards me, who, it was interesting because she was connected when I was in my disconnect, and she was stronger in the connect to me. And then I was like, okay, what is this? What is this energy that we share between us, the intensity of it? Where is this coming from? And it was a euphoric feeling. It made me more present. Mm-hmm. And then the clarity began, which is like the painful part of realizing that you wear masks, that you hide, that you don't really share what you really feel. You don't really tell yourself you're allowed to have something so magical and special.
Yeah.
And when we came into meeting each other the first time, the first couple of times we spent together was just in this really long, beautiful, unimaginable kiss. And just looking into each other like we've always been together. We've never been apart. And I think in that experience, it really shifted our perspective. It really shifted our experience. It really shifted everything we thought wasn't real became real. And I think in those experiences, when it became real, it was like planting a bunch of seeds to really kind of let us grow the seeds, or just keep them buried and never let them grow.
Yeah.
But of course, comes a time where you start telling yourself, this can't possibly be real. There's no way I'm allowed to have this. I'm not allowed to have this kind of energy where everything's beautiful all the time.
Yeah.
And then the past that created all of those masks show up.
Definitely. So, Sherry, how about you? Who were you before you started? Who were you?
I was a heathen. I was unconscious in the most unconscious way. I was wounded, and I was scarred. I was a victim of everything.
Yeah.
And I lived in victim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And I could lie my way out of a situation.
Yeah.
I wasn't who I knew I was. I had, like Lee said, many, many masks.
Yeah.
Lots of armor and lots of walls. However, I always use the analogy of a box that I have inside of my soul, that I had every little girl has dreams of a prince coming in on a white horse, and it's all beautiful and perfect, and there's a Cinderella dress. And mine wasn't like that. Mine was very spiritual. Mine was very, I had these ideas and expectation of not marriage, something different, a person who was me, or who understood me, or who wanted to understand me. And there was, in my thought process as a child, as a young child even, there was communication over everything in this box. Everything. How are you feeling today? How was your day at the end of the day? Is there anything you would like to talk about? Just an open, honest, and loving and caring. It was something that I shared with many friends, and they all told me that it was a pipe dream, and there's no such thing as unconditional love. There's no way somebody can love you without judgment or condition, and it's a fairy tale. Versus their fairy tale of a princess in a Cinderella dress and a prince on a white horse coming to rescue them, right? Mine was just different. And I carried that throughout my life, that box in my soul. And every relationship I would get into was serving me in some way, but I knew that the box couldn't be opened by that person.
It's interesting looking at the old self there and the masks, and you looking back at your childhood, and that showing up for us in the present moments as we go through certain experiences. We act ourselves out of those old situations, don't they? And old cycles get repeated, just through not allowing ourselves to fully step into who we are and purge. It's really interesting. So we step into the next phase of our journey, which is really where the journey begins, and when our soul is awakened. And I think the soul awakening process is so different for each and every one of us, especially when it comes to deep soul connections. And I think, again, it goes back to childhood as well, and those wounds surfacing as well as soul awakening. It's sort of an amalgamation of the both, I feel. But I'd love to know when your soul's awoken to one another, and what was the experience like for you both in those moments?
It was one big horrific, gigantic, beautiful mess. Because all of your emotions show up, all the things that you stuffed down, all the things that you thought were going to be locked away and nobody would need to know about. The reasons why you respond and react to things the way you do. We clashed because of those things, because they were unresolved and not healed. Mm-hmm. Then when we realized that we could heal them, we realized that that was an ongoing thing. Healing is never meant to be something you just kind of do once and never go back to. Yeah. And we started to notice that we had really hard times talking about stories that were things that happened to us. Yeah. And those things really kind of caused us to be stuck in our connection. And I think what it ended up doing to both of us in that awakening, when the soul finally woke up and said, yeah, let's look at your connection to yourself first. Yeah. We had to look at each one of the masks we created based on things that happened to us. And really realized we really didn't need those with each other. But did we really need those with anybody else anymore either? And that was a hard lesson for us to learn. Yeah. Because when did you ever have a pure soul connection? And when did you ever have a pure emotional connection? Yeah. Mental connection, all of the ways that this spiritual connection was trying to tell us we could have. We both, I think we more times than not said we just weren't worthy of something like this because of all the crap and all the masks we wore.
It's interesting you say that, actually, because just reflecting on what you said, it's as if we place conditions on all of the people that we meet in many ways, and yet when we meet certain deep soul connections, it's like we can't place any conditions on it at all, because it just is, isn't it? You know, it is what it is, and that's when we say, like, the conditions just have to fall by the wayside, so to speak. We just have to. We've got no choice. You know.
I think you're right. It comes back to self-love, and then going, do I have conditions?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
so Sherry, what was your soul awakening like? Sorry.
Ooh, which one?
Hers is way before mine.
Well, your soul awakening to Leah, let's say. What was ignited within you? You know.
Oh, mine was rough. That happened that began in 2002 or 3-ish. I found myself in a place in life that I wasn't enjoying. That I was placed in for reflection and to think and to feel. For 2 years, I retreated into myself, and man, did that cause the darkness to come. It was painful. There was a lot of purging. There was a lot of crying. My past came. The victim mentality at that point was in my throat almost. I physically threw up. It was a depressive state. But the difference in this one was I knew that there was light at the end of the tunnel, and I knew it wasn't a train. You know, there's so many times you think, oh, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Oh, it's a train, right? But I knew it wasn't. I knew that there was something on the other side. So after those 2 years of really just reawakening and coming into my truth and into myself, that was the big thing, coming into my truth, who I am and how I am. And it's me. It's me. Yeah. And that's when I opened myself up to meeting Lee. And it was 2005 when we first spoke, when we met. But when I met him, I knew that I felt the lid coming off the box. It was interesting. I knew that I could look into him and I could see darkness. That was a little scary. but I didn't know if it was his or mine. And I believe it was a
Mm.
combination of both, because I had to yet go through another reawakening after meeting him. And
Yeah.
it was not near as painful, but it was more of another awakening, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, yeah,
like
I know what you
then
mean. Yeah.
I had to go through I had to go through a 3D process of thought. Is this the
Mhm.
type of person I want in my life?
Yeah.
Is this the type of behavior that I want to bring into my family?
Yeah.
The 3D process tried to override the 5D process,
Yeah.
and the 5D process won. And it was
Yeah.
it was
So say we'll jump into that in a minute in the self-inquiry stage, because obviously that is where the battle begins, in some ways, What I'd be interested to find out here, though, is just by speaking to you both, it's interesting because I've noticed somewhat of a polarity between you both in terms of your awakening processes. Like Sherry's is on one side of the polarity and Lee's is on the other, So what was that like for you both? Because I'd imagine you probably noticed that within one another as well as your work,
Yin and yang both can exist in the same space. They actually were
Definitely.
created that way. So if you really kind of I think you're seeing is the ability for what it should look like when yin and yang comes together.
Yeah.
Two opposites that actually connect and stay connected and can step into the line in the middle, which is the S.
and balance.
And balance. And remember, there's Gemini Libra here, right? So you have the twins along with the balance.
Very cool.
Scales. So she can literally stand, and as she goes on one end, I can go grab her other end and we can both balance it out. It's almost as though we know how to exist in the same space at the same time. And I don't think we really understood how we got that way. It just kind of showed up that way because when we started really sharing things that happened to us, started sharing things that we've been through, and then started realizing how connected the time we were. We realized that it was trying to come in between us. And it's not like you do all of this to compete with time or to make time, but you do all of this in spite of it. You have to come, you can only come together in spite of time, not because of it.
Yeah.
And this was my greatest teacher in that, because, I'd be like, we'll be together someday. And her favorite line,
someday is not a day of the week.
Oh, and that was like it was like, ow. And I was like, wait a minute, when did I come up with someday was a day that was going to be able to mark on the calendar? So when I looked at the calendar, I looked for someday and didn't see it. And I was like, damn it, I hate it when she's right.
Let's shoot for Monday.
She's so
it's such a funny thing, isn't it?
But what you're seeing, I think, when you look at and you're hearing how we came together, my awakening was way different than her awakening, but her awakening caused mine. It was like when we came into that space where I was telling you this beautiful kiss happened, the self-inquiry began then. It was like, what is this, and why is this like amazing? And wait a minute, why don't I have this in any other aspect of my life? And it was like I wanted to just keep that hidden and separate from who I really was. And then I realized, wait a minute, isn't that a condition? Why am I separating this from who am I really who I'm supposed to be? So my awakening was, oh, she's not going to like this at all, right?
It's funny though how that awakening caused another awakening.
Yes. And then it was, and then that awakening, then the separation for like 2 years, and then coming back in 2007 and going, well, say bye to this guy with all these masks. You're never going to see him again. I'm going to take him and kill him off. And it was, the self-inquiry was in this. So it was like, these things had to come to a death, a physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental death. And I
Yeah.
thought, okay, I'm offing myself. And I failed at that, or did I? Because sometimes when you wake up and you see all the damage you left behind, you're going, oh, somebody's got to be responsible for this.
Yeah.
And
So I'm interested to see like, what were those inner battles you both faced individually in that phase of self-inquiry, battling with your ego, shifting from, 5D perception and 3D. We know the 5D is the unconditional place, but the 3D is where we put our own perceptions and conditions on things. So I'd be interested to see what your own individual battles were that you went through in terms of maybe acknowledging your self-worth, self-love, maybe noticing certain shadow aspects of yourself that you thought, oof, I don't want to see that. Sherry doesn't want to see that. Lee doesn't want to see that. Well, what were those inner battles you both faced,
there was something that softened the blow with that, actually. And it happened to us in like 2008, where I was still going through my awakening and still learning a little bit about who I was after I survived what I did. And I kept having this dream where I was in a fight with who I told myself I was and the me that I wanted to be. And she was standing there watching me in the dream. And I kept having this dream and kept having this dream. And it was always bloody, and it was always ending in some kind of really horrific death. And it was usually me trying to kill the parts of me with all the masks. And
very interesting.
I started having this similar dream where I was watching her do it. And it made it more comfortable for us to talk about the fights that we were at, the inner things that were going on with us, because of we were starting to really understand that we were connected, but we didn't. It was like, you were there. And she's like, why do I feel like I was? And it's like, why do I feel like I am? Then it's like, oh, we're experiencing something that neither one of us ran in. I mean, it may be different from her viewpoint, but I remember specifically when I was telling her about it, and she goes, yeah. And then I talked about mine and talked about mine. Then she came back and said, I had the same dream, except that was me fighting me. And I was like, ooh.
Yeah, and I suppose those dreams were the 5D consciousness trying to help you connect with your 3D reality in some ways, about what was being experienced, what were you going through, what were you trying to resolve within yourself,
The beautiful part was when in the dream, when she said, just let him kill you already. So I let the mask kill me. And then it disappeared, and she came over and picked up my limp body and carried me off. And next thing I knew, I couldn't be that way anymore. I couldn't be that way anymore. I didn't know how to wear a mask anymore. It was the strangest thing. It's like I woke up and I was so present, I didn't know how to accumulate any more past to keep the same mask going. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. It's just stepping into a new reality. I think, when that mask falls off, you are in some ways reborn. It's like liken it to a snake. The snake just sheds a part of its skin,
Yeah, and I think the deeper realization that was, I never allowed anybody to love the real me until that moment.
Sherry, what was your self-inquiry like? Was it very similar, obviously?
It was very similar, but it was what am I doing, right? The difference was I had teenage girls, and they were fighting all the time, and there was a lot of blah, and it was so peaceful over here. I going in about the connection, like, oh, the box is real? I thought it was just, wait a minute, hold on, it's been in here the whole time, but it's real, right? Because now I feel the box opening because I've met this guy. Am I worthy? Am I good enough? Will he judge me? Will he be able to handle this part of me? Will he be able to embrace my children? Will he be able to understand where I've been, what I've been through? We listen.
Yeah.
So much. But the main thing was, am I worthy?
Excellent. And the next phase I like to speak about is that shift. And for me, it's literally, it sounds like it's just a shift, quick shift, But for me, it's a massive thing. The shift in consciousness is huge, because it's then stepping onto the journey itself and choosing to embrace it. Because I feel like when we go through the phase in self-inquiry, we constantly have a choice whether we want to be there or we want to move forward. Either we continue the battle, or the inner questioning, or we actually say, look, I'm going to step on my journey now and embrace it. And that's the shifting consciousness I believe in, stepping in and feeling that confidence, that self-esteem, and saying, I may have these wounds, I may have these inner doubts or concerns, but I'm going to take that next step now, whatever it may bring me. And it'll be interesting to see what both of your shifts were there.
You want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Oh.
Let me tell you, which shift? No, I'm not, but I know the shift you're speaking of. It's
yeah.
You can go. Yeah, go ahead.
Even now that you're doing this with you and talking about these different things and looking at the aspects of how we are together, and even some really current things that still happen with this.
Yeah.
I'm realizing something that I'm still shifting through since 2005.
Mm-hmm.
Is unconsciousness doesn't know what consciousness is.
Yeah, very true.
So what my consciousness at this moment, in this present moment, is looking back at all of the carnage that unconsciousness caused and saying, I love you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I love you in spite. I love you without time. I don't judge any of those things, because energy always is going to be moving back and forth. And when you were unconscious, you didn't move at all. So
Definitely.
I look at it and I'm like, when I look at how beautiful everything is, and I look at our connection, then I look at what our connection has put into healing within my connection to myself. I still try to measure it in a space of being worthy or being accepting or knowing I was meant for this, and then my unconsciousness still is there and making all the noise telling me how I'm not. And I've become consciously aware of that. Does that make sense? So the shift is always happening. Every step, every movement. There is nobody on this planet I'd rather be in this adventure with than this beautiful, wonderful twin I have right here. There's nothing like it, and there will never be anything like it again. She looks at me without the eyes of judgment, and yet I can tell myself she's judging me. She's judging me. It's like, oh, I'm unconscious again. And then I welcome back some more unconsciousness to get conscious again. And then there's just something.
I love that there. I love it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like the unconscious becomes conscious, allowing yourself to be fluid in those moments. And
my shift was a little different, and I know we're shifting all the time, but there was a shift in me that was major and life changing, and it was after I met Lee that I knew inside of me that I was a good person. I knew that the right thing was always in me, and that I wanted to live a strong, positive, healthy life, and not be in turmoil with bogged down by armor. My shift was just tearing off the armor and completely, and deciding at decide, and I remember it like it was yesterday, where I was, what color the blanket was, what I was wearing, everything. And I decided at that point in time, and we were in separation at this point in time, that I was no longer going to have a mask on, that I was no longer going to not be who I am, because what I did was cover up the goodness with darkness and just everything. It was just a mess.
Yeah.
And I was going to live in my truth from that moment forward. And what came out of my mouth was sacred, and it was gold, and I meant it. And
Beautiful.
And I was, and in meditation, and just learning to be present, and knowing that I'm not going to be all the time, and accepting the fact that I'm not perfect. That was big. I was striving for perfection that was unattainable. And I just wanted to be who I am and be accepted for who the hell I am, good and bad. And I was going to live that way, and I lived that way. And and at that point in time, whoever came into my life would accept that about me,
Excellent.
or go on along their way. And I did meet someone who did accept that, but he wasn't the one I needed to accept it.
Yeah.
He wasn't the one I wanted to accept it. And then when I just literally started living that type of lifestyle, and just being free, and just being me, saying what I want, doing what I want, and never doing the bad thing, always making sure it's positive, and always putting out positive energy, and little things, dropping $20 in a parking lot on purpose, saying hello to somebody.
Perfect.
Little tiny things, little acts of kindness that I just had always wanted to do, but never really took the time to do it, because there was a blanket of darkness over me. And now I'm just free to be who I am. That my shift was out, completely out of the darkness and into the light.
That's quite phenomenal. Fantastic.
Her shift was beautiful from the standpoint that once she accepted herself, she created a pathway for me to accept her too. Really tough part of shifting is acceptance.
I was just speaking to someone about that today, actually. Once you allow your own barriers down, you allow yourself to fully accept you, then you open up the doorway to so many other possibilities. Everything opens up, and it's just stepping into that place, isn't it? And that's beautiful. So it's really good.
I think our biggest aha is we don't accept possibilities. We're afraid of them.
Yeah, true. Very true.
But what are we afraid of if we've never accepted them?
Yeah. It's a good thing to think about. If we look at the next phase of your journey, and so now you've shifted, you've moved in to the next phase of your soul pathway. You're embracing your soul now, and your completeness, your wholeness in many ways. The phase of transcendence is really very much where you learn, you grow, you transform, and you transcend to higher levels of consciousness. But this phase is never an easy phase, because it's the learning, growing spiritually, emotionally, physically. And I'd be interesting to find out what your challenges were, and if you could think of maybe 3 for each of you that stand out more than the others when you grow, develop, and transform, on your journey.
Fear.
Yeah.
The mind.
The creator of fear.
Yeah. Mind noise, definitely mind noise.
I would tell you each shift is always coming out of it. It's never really, like you said, you never really come out of it. And I think a lot of it showed up in a way that I think was a concept that we don't really look for when we have a spiritual awakening. We usually look up higher self, but we don't see the way to get there as inner journey.
Mm.
And a lot of inner healing and a lot of inner paths that you create to live from your heart. You have to get out of your mind, which is your fear, and you want to dictate every outcome. And I think the biggest shift yet is letting go of control that you can't.
Yeah.
And then you have to fall in love with your fear to find what's inside of it.
So what trials did you face personally? And what did you do to overcome them?
Well, in every trial, there's, of course, the prosecution and the defender and the judge and the jury, and we're all of it. So we're the ones that have imprisoned us, and we're the ones that let us act.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak a little human.
I'm sorry.
He likes to go in alien.
I see.
I call it alien. It's really not.
You're twins in alien.
There was there's so many. Social stigma was an obstacle for me, and I don't know why, because it's nothing, right?
Mm.
It's almost like, hey, I found this amazing, great connection, and this is how it is, and you're standing there on a stage talking about it, and they're hitting you with tomatoes and lettuce, right? I mean, it's a persecution of you're crazy. Or when we actually started our business, we were called a cult at one point in time, and many different attacks. Those obstacles were hard for me, but in my awakening process, I have it's mind noise. And still struggle with mind noise. It just is there. And mind rationaling. My mind wants to rationalize everything. And my soul just wants to be in the present moment. And my soul just wants to be.
Yeah.
But my mind wants to make everything difficult. And I'm a very simple person. And I just like to keep it simple. But my mind wants to create an obstacle course for me to jump through to get to a goal, when all I got to do is walk through it.
So that was your biggest obstacle there, your consciousness battling with your unconscious.
Exactly. Oh man. Yeah.
I'd say my biggest obstacle has been education versus life experience.
Yeah.
I think, life experience, you both are the teacher and the student. Education, you're just a student. And,
this is what I love about the soul pathway process, because for me, the soul pathway is all about the realization that our journey is what teaches us what we need to learn. Our journey is what allows us to become the person we're meant to be. It's not formal education, like learning about different subjects here, there, and everywhere. It's about realizing that what we learn and understand on our journey through self-education really allows us to unfold into this beautiful and amazing being if we allow it to do so. And each and every obstacle that we face, challenge, is only that stepping stone that takes us where we need to go. And it's about learning what that is for us individually through our own inner child work, or whatever that might be, past. Yeah. Is there any other significant possibly obstacles that maybe you individually face that you overcome?
And we have been faced with just about all of it. I don't think there's anything that we haven't had to deal with, especially in our union. there's been a lot of tragedy. There's been a lot of hurt. There's been a lot of heartache. There's been a lot of misunderstandings. There's been a lot of conflict. There's just been a lot. You think it would get easier and easier to overcome, and in some ways it definitely is. But in other ways, when you put a spiritual aspect on a 3D situation, it becomes very, very confusing, right?
Yeah.
Learning how to live from a soul space and not a head space.
Yeah.
Is something that I still struggle with a lot. And I had overcome it at one point. It was like an alcoholic, and I had been sober for 20 years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I listened to my mind again. Right?
So it's like trusting in the divine then.
My mind instead of following my soul. Just like that, just like an alcoholic would pick up a drink after 20 years, I started listening to my mind again. Yeah. And learning how to decipher between the two of them. Like, okay, I don't feel that, I think that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just like all of the things she said, then there's the other side. There's a lot of adventure. There's a lot of bliss. There's a lot of creative energy of things that we've done, a lot of healing that's been done, a lot of freeing ourselves from our mind. So just as you have both aspects, like I was saying, yin and yang together, you are going to experience all of those things. It's not all just in one side of it. We do have our moments where we can slow dance in the middle of the kitchen and not see anybody else here. We have our moments where we have the knockdown dragouts, but then we also have the balance of in between, where we know that no matter what we do, our connection is going to win. And we always want that to win, right? I mean, that's the one thing we always wished for and always hoped for, and always knew that one day she was going to be able to open her box and I was going to be able to open mine, and we could both dance in each other's box. But I don't think we knew that we would have to go through all of that and then look at it from more of a global or universal way of looking at it to see that it is connection. Yeah. Connection isn't just bliss. I mean, a lot of people want it to be, but they also have to remember that in this journey, bliss and unhappiness and happiness and all those emotions are going to be involved in your journey. But if you're sharing them in this connection, you got to speak from it too, right? So
it's the embodiment of everything, isn't it? Like you said.
There's always going to be that divide, but that divide, if you really tell yourself, can also equal coming together.
Yeah. What's interesting here as well, like from what you were saying there, for me, one word that came up in my head was sacrifice. Sacrificing ourselves to the journey, and releasing ourselves from all the expectations we placed on us. Would you say that was a part of it there? There was just some words that flew into my mind that I wanted to express.
It's a sacrifice to look at your fear and say, I'm going to choose something else. Because your fear is going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to tell you about all the ways this could go bad. And, you have to mind, right? And the mind's going to be there to remind you that this sacrifice and tell you something about, is it worth it? What does worth have to do with love?
Yeah.
So it's like you have to choose the sacrifice. I'm sacrificing for love instead of worth.
Definitely. So if we move on to the penultimate stage of our journey and soul pathway, obviously our journey never ends. We constantly grow, transcend, and move to higher levels of consciousness. But I do believe we all reach a phase of our journey where we come to a place of unification of self, that wholeness, that undescribable place of bliss and peace and tranquility, and so many more incredible words that we can describe. But it's just being fully and beautifully present. Tell me about your phases of unification and wholeness, and what it was like for you individually, and then the unification of one another as you come together.
So one caterpillar on one side of the highway and another caterpillar on the other side of the highway meet in the middle and create a cocoon and stay in that cocoon because they made it across the highways without getting run over. When we came out of the cocoon, we realized that she was one wing and I was the other, and we couldn't fly straight, but we flew together beautifully. That's the only way I know how to say it.
Well, yeah.
And I think we're still flying a little lopsided, and we're ready to go into another cocoon and do it again.
Sometimes we take a nosedive and we're like, oh.
Right. Or sometimes we don't make it across the highway.
Yeah.
The other has to come get parts of us.
Right.
I mean, we're a caterpillar. Across that highway really slow, but when we meet and go into the cocoon that we can spin and really sit with each other and actually sit in it, I don't know that there's any other beautiful wings that get created other than that.
What were your individual unions of self like though, before union? You know, how, you know, what was that individual unification of self like when you came at one with all those different aspects, your ego, yourself, and your shadow? You felt in many ways complete within yourself.
When we met and I knew that she could see in me, I ran because I clearly wasn't in union with myself. And then I started kind of just taking little bits and pieces, and that dark night of the soul, I was so surrounded by darkness, so surrounded by it, so consumed by it. I don't know necessarily how to tell you what I experienced, but all I knew is that anything that is surrounded by darkness is called the sun.
Yeah.
So was I the all-consuming light at that point, and I could shine the light on whatever I was telling myself my life was, and how it was going to be? Was I dictating everything?
Yeah.
It took me a while to figure that out because I just thought I was just sitting out in the middle of darkness. Well, the sun doesn't look lonely, so why should I?
It's interesting.
And what was this revolving planet around me called Sherry? I'm like, what is this thing? And then I realized that, wait a minute, that's the other half of this sun that I happen to be on. And maybe it's all just one sun and everything around us is darkness, and we know how to exist in it. It was really quite surreal as far as spiritually looking at it and defining it or speaking to you about it in that way. But it seems like we know how to be that 360 degrees, but it's not without sometimes realizing, wait a minute, is the backside dark or is it light? You know, it's like you'd never travel to the other side of the sun to figure out if it's that way all the way around. You know, we all wouldn't necessarily think that because we're moving, not the sun. So it really kind of, I don't know.
Funny when you mentioned death and rebirth earlier as well.
Yeah.
Because I believe the unification process is that death and rebirth at the same time. The completely letting go of everything and saying, this is who I am now. Because I feel that phase of transcendence, that road of trials, is really building up to stepping into who you are now and being reborn. That unification, that wholeness, you know.
I think it's reclaiming your innocence. Because everything you've been through up until that point, when you get to the point where you come to your awakening, you carry so much guilt and shame and horror and sadness. And I mean, there's some parts that are good and some parts that are bad, but all of it just gets purged in an instant. Like, why did I make this all about me, my life, and my experiences, instead of making this about the love that I could have anyway?
What was it like for you, Sherry, like the unification process?
A dream. I had I had reconciled my mind and my soul, which you can't do that. But you can try. I did it. Thought I had anyway. That I am connected to Lee, and I will always be connected to Lee, but we will never physically be together. That freed me, and to be able to be with him.
Really interesting. Yeah.
It was a surprise, but it was also not. There's no way to describe it except for bliss and harmony. At that point in time, there was so much harmony. Like our dreams were the same. The talk was, the communication was always, it was constant. And it was the whole process was a spiritual experience.
Fantastic. Union is a beautiful thing, isn't it? Just as it is, you know.
It's a beautiful mess.
It's a beautiful disaster.
And it's perfectly
imperfect.
Oh,
I always love that phrase.
Harmonized there, didn't you?
So the unification, now that you've unified, what is the experience of living in sacred partnership, divine union, and following your soul's purpose individually every day and together every day as well? You know.
It's 5D beings attempting to live in a 3D world. Not by choice.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, and it's messy, and it's challenging. Because we live in a 3D world, and there are 3D emotions, and there are 3D actions, and there are 3D. The vacuuming still has to be done. I mean, we're very spiritual beings, but somebody's got to vacuum the floor. I see
laundry.
It's an adventure.
Yeah. But sorry, go ahead. You go ahead.
I think it's an explosion.
Yeah.
Because, in connection, you need to have explosion to keep rebirthing, right? So we do have our clashes. We do have our coming together. We do have our clashes. We do have our coming together. And it's like each time it's just a deeper and deeper layer. Mm-hmm. Even if it's 3D or if it's 5, controlling it or letting go of control of it and saying, how do you think the universe was created? Everything collided and an explosion happened. So if you're made from that same energy and you're in the same space, you'll keep doing the same thing. And I think each time we do learn something greater from each other, and we do learn something greater about ourselves before the other. Mm-hmm. So that unification by itself, I think, is just beautiful because it's always going to have some form of passion. Saw the head jerk. So I'm like, yes, I spot on.
Would you say you both at times then still fall into those traps of our ego conditioning? Our conditioned mindset, sort of. Oh, this is it's just popped up again. I'm going to play that out for about 5 minutes, sort of thing.
We don't have an immune system of the soul. We have an immune system of the human body. But that doesn't mean you cannot have one in the soul. So the soul is aware that there is an infection called the mind. So it really kind of just says, you know what, I can live with this. And it says, I'll keep you around as long as I can, as long as you don't let the infection overtake you. But it does have a way of doing that. And the really beautiful part is in our energy, I think we've come with it. Sherry's better at it and more beautiful at it than I am when it comes to realizing when I'm infected with mind. But it's because my consciousness stands back while my unconsciousness takes over. And she's really good about going, hey, you're being, she says it in a way that I get it. And then it brings me back to consciousness. And then it's her energy. You know what I mean? So
you ground one another as well in the present moment, grounding yourself in the experience, because of that yin and yang, the completeness of self, one another.
That makes for some interesting spiritual magic. Let's tell you that way, because when we're both grounded, all of our electronics stop working. Our power goes out. It's the craziest thing, because one of us has to be positive, while the other one has to be grounded. And it's like,
So as we reach the sort of final few questions of the interview, or your journey and soul pathway, really, what I'd love to find out is who you both are and what you do together in terms of supporting others on their journey based on the experiences that you've gone through. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make perfect sense. And Lee and I were having a discussion last night and talking, and we went into his childhood and what he had been through. And we run a program called Root Camp, and it really just gets to the root of the situation. And Lee he had found one of his own roots of where the pain and where the hurt and where the triggering comes from. And I was able to listen to him and understand what he was saying in a completely different way than I ever have, on why he acts and reacts sometimes the way he does. And I had some confusion about it, but when he brought it to my attention last night, we were talking about it, I was like, oh, well, that it makes perfect sense. And it fits like a puzzle, right? Communication. I don't think that there's any other way to support a partner, a friend, a husband, a wife, or someone in sacred union with you. There's no other way but constant communication. And it could be a great and amazing week and things are going lovely, but I do feel like when you're in union like that, you still need a good morning, you still need a I love you, good evening, or good night, or how was your day? It's interesting because Lee and I are together 24 hours a day. We live here, we work here, we eat together, we sleep together, everything we do is together, right? Without being codependent on one another. And I find myself like, okay, where did Lee go? And it's not that I'm dependent on him to survive. I'm curious as to where he's at. You know what I mean? Where did Lee go?
I forgot to communicate that purpose.
And I believe when one person's going through something and the other one sees that person struggling, that it's a time for conversation. That conversation is what brings the support in the union. Communication is the key. Everything. How did you feel about that? Yeah, it was all right. Yeah, me too. Cool. That could have been the end of the conversation, right? But the conversation just keeps going. In the deep parts of the conversation, when you're laying in bed and you're both have your head on the pillow and you're just talking to one another about, and it could be football, it could be spirituality, it could be anything.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, then one or the other or both is just going to start piling emotion, human emotion, on top, until you're so full of human emotion that you react to that human emotion.
Yeah.
If you keep that file cabinet empty and you put a couple files in, but you pull them out and you talk about them and you air them out, then the file cabinet's empty. And you start another day and you start to file shit away. It happens, right? We are human. But at the end of the day, empty your file cabinet. And hey, did you struggle with anything today? Was there anything said? Or are you is your thought process stuck on something today? And some days it'll be, no, it was a great day. I had a great day. But other days it's going to be like, man, this triggered me and that triggered me. And it's a release. It's an emotional and a physical release communication.
Yeah. So if I was to ask you, how would you encapsulate Relationships Reinvented and the work that you do there?
Relationship Reinvented is interesting because we do so much. Yeah. We, it just like I was talking about pillow talk. When Lee and I were reconciling from one of our many separations in the past, we were just having pillow talk. What would you like to do? We've been through so much, man. We could help others not have to do this. This is insane, right?
Yeah.
And, in pillow talk, well, what would you call it? And then we came up with Relationship Reinvented, and it means a lot, right? Who doesn't need and want to reinvent the relationship they have with themselves first, right?
Yeah.
So you can reinvent the relationship you have with others. And it could be a mother, it could be a father or sister or brother or a twin flame or somebody you're spiritually connected to, or anybody, right? Reinventing yourself, which is what I did with that shift. My whole relationship to myself was reinvented. I no longer disliked who I was. I actually liked who I was, who I am. I liked that. And in that forming of that, the universe gave us the spiritual connection dynamic. You guys have been through this. You can help all these people. And then it got broader. We just want to be able to help anybody go into healing over just about anything. I am a sexual abuse survivor. So I knew that I could use that not only for my own healing, but for someone else's as well. Because me speaking about my own would help somebody find the courage to speak about theirs and be brave enough to do that. So we incorporated that in. We have an amazing dynamic with my son's father. He's part of our family. He's here at Christmas. He's here at summer barbecues. He's here. We see him at least 2 or 3 times a week. When we have a family gathering, he doesn't even get invited. He just comes because he's part of the family. And we raise my son together, all 3 of us. It's 4 of us, because my ex-husband lives with his brother. And it's just one big family. So we knew we needed that program to incorporate and help people share parenting effectively and lovingly. And then along came I want to do what you guys do. And I wasn't giving that up because I created that and the universe gave it to me and I was selfish, but we made the program and it's successful and it's amazing. And we are putting quality coaches out there and coaches who know the right questions to ask and who have clients of their own that they're helping go into healing. So that's part of our program, is to spread that out and help hug the world with Relationship Reinvented, just hug the world. And we've got, what we wanted to do first of all was root camp. Root camp is just us and going into the roots of the issues and the self-love and then bringing the inner child out and finding love for yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, how can anybody else love you?
100%. And that's a journey in itself, isn't it? Journey of self-love.
It's Relationship Reinvented in a nutshell.
The only thing I would add is my beautiful twin here was able to create this program which looks at your connection pathology, but it shows you, when you look at it, you get to see what the things that happen to you on the outside, because it's really easy to talk about everything that everybody did to you, but it's not very easy to talk about what you did to you because of what everybody did to you. So
that's a very interesting one. Yeah.
And how you keep doing that and how you keep that. And so it's almost like we understand how people make masks and hide behind things, because we went through it in some of the worst and most really damaging ways. But then when we realized we were the ones that were continuing it and prolonging it and giving it still too much power, we just didn't know how to come out of that. And our connection showed us how. So why not put something out there that doesn't help people cope, but put something out there that puts them into healing? We don't want to keep it. We want you to be able to discover that your love is real behind everything that's happened to you. And that should be what you gravitate to before you gravitate to what everything did to you.
Yeah. Where can we find out? Where can we find out more about yourself and your work?
www.RelationshipReinvented.com or YouTube, Lee and Sherry, Twin Flames, Lee and Sherry Patterson.
Yes. And Facebook?
Mm-hmm. So there was a glitch.
We had a slight glitch there, but we are back.
Oh.
We got both of that in anyway, so that's fantastic. So you've got RelationshipsReinvented.com. And what was the second one again?
YouTube, Twin Flames, Lee and Sherry Patterson.
Yeah.
Facebook, Relationship Reinvented, Twin Flames, Lee and Sherry Patterson. Twin Flame Work Group by Relationship Reinvented is there. Patreon, we have a Patreon site.
Yeah.
Go in there, you get exclusive Lee and Sherry by themselves, just doing them. Exclusive videos and stuff there.
What I do anyways, for those of you watching, connecting with this interview and connecting with their incredible story, all of the links will be below. So don't worry about remembering any of this. Just look below the video. All of the links will be there. So you can connect with Lee and Sherry and find out more about themselves and their work.
There we are. And we're back.
Final question.
Yes.
What bit of advice what final nugget of wisdom would you send out to our viewers who are watching this today?
Oh, where do we start? Fall in love with you so you will can accept someone else's love.
Mm.
That's big, because if you don't have self-love, what you're going to attract is someone who doesn't have self-love. And that's going to be a bumpy ride. Do your work, and we can have the most perfect upbringing and the most perfect life, but when we get older, we realize that shit, I don't like this. You know what I mean? This isn't perfect at all. This is just an illusion of perfection.
Mm.
It's an outward beauty and inward turmoil.
Yeah.
Go in, and we like to analogize it by saying your life is like a house, and we have all these rooms in our house. And some of these rooms we like to shut, lock, and deadbolt the door, and nobody's getting in there. But then there's the clean, perfect areas that we let everybody see. Yeah. We let everybody come into the living room because it's dusted and it's vacuumed and nothing's out of place. But do not open the bedroom door, because things are going to fall on you, right? And we go in like a SWAT team and just start kicking down the doors.
Good. Did you want to add anything there, Lee, as a final nugget of wisdom?
If you can look over your life or look outside of yourself in this moment, do you believe that you could trust somebody with all of your emotions and let them love you for it?
And with that, I think that is a perfect way to finish, because trust is huge, massive. How can we trust another with everything? Our emotions are purely everything, aren't they?
And if you can say no, it's because you don't trust your emotions, nor will you accept them. And that's why nobody can accept them either.
Mm.
Don't expect anybody to walk down a path you haven't created within yourself, because the path won't be available.
Love it, love it. And that's all about the soul pathway, following your own soul pathway, allowing it to evolve into yourself. So I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your spiritual journey, your soul pathway, and more importantly, what I loved is just the merging of both of your journeys as they became interwoven together. You know, becoming at one with self, becoming at one with one another, and creating this beautiful sacred partnership of which you live each and every day. It's a beautiful one. It's been a pleasure sharing it with everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Yes, for sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for listening. As I mentioned before, all the links are below for Lee and Sherry's work, YouTube, website links, and all of their social media as well. Thank you again all for tuning in, and I'll see you again for another interview very soon.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.